Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to share part one of my testimonial, Drawing Nearer to God. If you're new here, my name is Ashley, and I create faith and lifestyle content, inspiring you to prioritize a personal relationship with God. So let's jump right into part one of my testimonial. I would definitely say during 2020, there were so many things that altered the course of my life, so many things that I was dealing with personally. And 2020 was definitely a year that was not normal for many of us with the pandemic and everything else going on in life. But for me, that was definitely a point where I realized there was something else that I needed, something else that I was missing in life. And that's when I started to look at my life and really reflect on choices I had been making for the past few months and years that were not leaving me satisfied, and ultimately I wasn't happy with. And that's essentially the year where I really began to draw nearer to God and build a relationship with Him and begin to prioritize our relationship. So at that point in life, I was 32 the first half of the year, 33 the second half of the year. That was my first year of my first business ever, which was my online boutique. I was in the first few months of launching that because I had just launched that business back in November of 2019. So I was learning so much. I was taking a lot of online courses, learning how to run ads. I was running my business by myself. So that alone had me really stressed out and overwhelmed, but it was something new and something that I was really passionate about. So at the same time, it also brought me a lot of joy and bliss in my life that other areas did not bring me at that point. And then of course, on top of that, with the pandemic, I stopped working that spring. So our job where I was working shut down in March of 2020, and we were shut down for about 3 months. So that allowed me to have time to solely focus on myself, my business, my health. I started to work out more. I was also able to focus on the courses I was taking and really learn the information I needed to try to get my business off the ground and hopefully make it successful with that extra time that I had at that point. And that particular year, I would say, with me being a solopreneur, meaning I did everything, I basically wore all the hats in my business, and I was doing at that point close to 15 to 18 different jobs by myself with my business, including being the model, doing the marketing, the branding, all the stuff on the back end, admin stuff, literally everything by myself, except for the exceptions of when I would have a relative help me take pictures or do a quick video, things like that. That year, I was also not yet diagnosed with my health condition that I'm living with now, but that was the year that I also realized something was off in my body, and I had to see a specialist to figure out what was going on and have a procedure done that most people don't have until they're much older in life. Generally 40 and 50s is when you would have the procedure that I had done. But I had to schedule an emergency appointment with a specialist. After explaining some of the symptoms I had, they decided I did need the procedure. And based on the results of that procedure, I was kind of informed of a health condition that I was going to be living with for the rest of my life, but I hadn't necessarily been properly diagnosed at that point and really hadn't done my own research to truly understand what it was that I was living with. But I had a general idea of what it was, how it impacted me, but hadn't been officially given a diagnosis at that point. So I don't know if you know anyone who has any health conditions, or if you too are living with a health condition that is life-altering. But one thing about health conditions that are physical, they can definitely take a toll on you mentally, especially when you don't really know exactly how to improve the condition you have outside of just taking medication. So I had to start figuring out what I could eat and couldn't eat. It's a gut health condition that I'm living with. And when I wasn't properly diagnosed, I kind of internally dealt with that and tried to open up with people who were close to me about how traumatic that was for me and share some of the things that I was going through and how it impacted my body. So of course, naturally, it took a toll on me emotionally, as I mentioned, and also mentally. So I didn't really know how to properly deal with that because I had never dealt with anything like that in my life, and I was relatively young at that point. I was in my early 30s, and I just had to figure it out really on my own. I decided to get a second opinion, go to a different doctor. Because of the results from my first procedure, I had to also have that same procedure done 6 months later. So again, it was actually a pretty serious condition. The form that I have is considered mild, but it was still something that I had to cope with, and definitely weighed on me and was heavy in a way that I can only describe as once you go through your first health scare and you're diagnosed with something, but maybe it's not properly communicated to you, it could be even more traumatic, having to figure out so much on your own, and on top of that, everything else in life that I was going through. So of course, everyone deals with family drama. I was single at this point in life, dating. I was also just wanting to settle down, but I had been in so many relationships that have failed in the past. I didn't want to force or rush anything. So I was hopeful that this year in life, I would meet someone who was serious about dating and also wanted to pursue a relationship and be in a committed relationship. But at the same time, I just realized that year I was also dating a lot of the wrong people. For that reason, I do feel like that's why I was so consumed with my business, because it was the first year, because of dealing with so many failed relationships, and even also at that point in time, failed friendships, and then as I mentioned before, family drama. The one outlet that I had to kind of remove the stress and help me with being free of some of the things that were weighing on me and really heavy at that point in time was my business. So I was really delving into that, and then also just trying to change eating habits, as I said before, work out, just be healthier physically now that I was living with this new condition that I had found out about that year, and just trying to focus on my mental health as well, because that had kind of declined, and I was somewhat depressed when I found out that I would be living with this condition for the rest of my life. And the medication I was taking at that point, I felt like wasn't really getting my body back to where it was before. And I didn't feel like it was essentially making all the difference I was hoping it would. So that's when I had to kind of, on my own again, kind of figure out, and then also reach out to my new doctor about things that I could do and add to my diet that would make the difference of me feeling normal again and my body being more normal and not abnormal, and just feeling like myself again ultimately. So as I continue to focus more on myself, my health, and my business, I still felt like there was something else that I needed. There was something that I wasn't getting in life. There was something else that was missing from my life, and I realized I needed a relationship with God, a closer relationship with God. I don't think I realized that year how distant I was from God, but I knew I wanted to work on our relationship and spend more time with Him and build upon the relationship at that point that I thought we had, but later realized we had no relationship at all. 2020 was the year that I began to communicate more with God, pray to God, and not just like asking for things and always praying to receive things, but just praying to God and seeking Him, turning to Him, and praying to Him about my life, thanking Him for certain things, waking up with an attitude of gratitude, and just pursuing him more than I had in the past. At that point, I wasn't necessarily praying every day. I definitely wasn't reading my Bible every day. I was definitely turning my heart towards God more and drawing nearer to him. 2021 and 2022 were certainly years I realized I needed to start thinking more long term as I began to get closer to God. So I really started to think about my life and where I wanted to be 5 years, 10 years from that point. Things that I desired, choices that I was making that ultimately had led me to the life I had and why I didn't have certain things that I desired. So I began to make decisions for myself that would benefit me and help me long term, even financially. I was investing more in my business, and it wasn't just at that point time, money, all of my energy outside of working full time was going into my business. I also ended up relaunching that business in 2022, and from that point, every year, full year, each year of that business that I was running, which is my online boutique, I was investing 5 figures each year into that business to make it successful, make it work, and hoping that that would eventually pay off and allow me to quit my job so I could just focus on that business and continue to grow and scale it. I had also made a few other decisions financially that in the short term would be sacrifices, but in the long term would benefit me to be able to do what I needed to do presently, and it would pay off over time, and in the years to come be a definite risk and sacrifice that was worth making. I had really started to weed out people in my life at that point too, and really start enforcing and setting boundaries with the people that were in my life. So I would say that was kind of when less family drama was something that I was focused on, because I was doing my best to eliminate that as much as possible. I was also looking for more in people that pursued me, so I was better at vetting people at that point. A lot of people that I just realized going out with them would just be a waste of my time. And again, I was more focused on God, so I was reading my Bible more, praying more. And in 2021, I also ended up getting a new place. On and off for quite a few years. In my late 20s up until my early 30s, I had always ended up in a situation where I was living with someone else, or I had allowed someone else to live with me. Sometimes in life, when you are always living with someone else, you don't have that alone time, the still and quiet moments you need to even realize that that is the time, the quality time you could be setting aside and spending with God. So for the first time in years, I had got my own place, no roommates, no one living with me, and I just really was able to focus on God and deepen our relationship that we had already been building for a few years. And I began to really get to my Bible more and pray to God every day and just connect with him on a deeper level. The year that I would say I really and truly surrendered my life to Christ and started to really live for God so he could live in and through me was 2023. 2023 was such a monumental year in my life, and it's a year that I will never forget. That was the year, I would say, where the change and the transition really took place, where it wasn't about self-will anymore, my will for my life, and it became more about, I want to pursue God's will. I want to be aligned with God. I want my life to be completely his and live my life for Christ. And I briefly talked about all the things that I surrendered throughout the past few years in my welcome video. If you haven't watched that video, I'm going to link that at the top of this video, so definitely go back and watch my welcome intro video and debut on YouTube so you can get to know more about me. 2023 was the year that I really wanted to draw nearer to God even more, and I really wanted to be rooted in Christ more and closer to God and have more of him pouring into me and less of me. I wanted to change my ways because I realized what we attract in life is what we are. And what I was attracting in life, even situations that I found myself constantly in, I had to accept and realize if this is what I'm dealing with, if these are the people in my life, then at some point I have to recognize that this is who I am and this is what I'm accepting and allowing in my life. And for me, I was ready for a change. I was ready for transformation. I was ready for more of God, God's presence, God's provision, God's parameters over my life. I needed more of Him. So I had decided that God was going to be my top priority, my first love. He was going to become everything in my life and be above all else. Nothing would be before Him. That year, I stopped drinking. I stopped listening to certain music. The first half of the year, I went to therapy in 2023 from like the spring, March time until June. So cycles of therapy, usually in the beginning, you go every 2 weeks to every 3 weeks. And I did my first cycle of therapy from March until June of that year. Talking with your friends is definitely therapeutic, but there's nothing like therapy. Church is great for healing, but church is not therapy. There's nothing like therapy, and we all need to go to therapy at some point in life. Of course, it's not something that you're always going to be in, but if you haven't gone to therapy yet, and it's something that you've thought about, something you've considered in the past, I would definitely recommend that you try therapy out because it's life-changing and can heal you in so many ways and help you remove so many things that you've been holding on to and you probably don't even realize it. Therapy is for everyone. It's something that you can certainly put into the box of get uncomfortable to get comfortable in life and stretch yourself if you really want to grow and evolve and mature and develop into who you were created to be. The first cycle, of course, is probably just going to be about what you're currently dealing with because life has definitely been lifing for so many of us. But as you continue to go back and have more cycles of therapy, that's when you can really begin to peel back the layers and realize how much therapy can help you in life and to be a more well-rounded person. If you're not at a point where you can get therapy and you don't think right now it's a good fit for you, I completely understand. There are definitely other things you can try first to heal and get to that point. Journaling and also meditating definitely helps. I've done both. I still journal all the time. Meditation is something that you kind of have to fit into your schedule. It just takes a few minutes every day or the days you choose to meditate, but that calm and stillness each day, just like you fit in doing everything else throughout the day, will help you get back centered and really help you with your emotional health and your mental health and all that life can bring and all the adversities in life that you may be facing currently. And then of course, with everyone being so busy these days and having hectic schedules, certainly consider online therapy sessions as well. That may be something that you can do first and then maybe try therapy in person once you get more comfortable. But in life, definitely always be stretching yourself. There is absolutely nothing you can't not do in life. And just keep in mind, you can do anything in life through Christ who strengthens you. So something else other than just going to therapy that I did that year and not drinking anymore, I also realized the job I had at that point just wasn't working for me. And although I did definitely plan to quit on good terms and put in my 2-week notice, I kind of ended up quitting a spur of the moment type thing with a situation that happened that I definitely never expected. And that was around August. So for the first time in my adult life, I had decided to quit my job and focus fully on the business that I was running at that point, which was no longer my boutique. I had got into digital and affiliate marketing that year. The year prior, I had decided after running my boutique for over 4.5 years, it was time to close that business and pivot, which I did. And I transitioned into a service-based business. And I wanted to give that my all. So when I quit my job for the first time in my life, I had all of my time and energy to pour into that business. Now that I was no longer working part-time at the job that I had just quit, I was just freeing myself of so many things, freeing myself from drinking, freeing myself in ways through therapy that I was getting for the first time with my therapist, and just healing from so many different things by going to those sessions and talking with her. And then the freedom that you get from no longer working a job that your whole life is revolved around, your schedule is revolved around, there's really no way to explain it. It's just something that I can only hope and pray anyone who is pursuing entrepreneurship gets to experience at some point. That is when I became even closer with God, and I could start my day and my mornings with Him every day, not some days, every day. And I was able to spend time with Him and as much time as I wanted at the start of my day. The freedom that I got after quitting that job and just having a schedule every day that I was able to create, and starting each morning the way I chose to and wanted to, with God first. Again, I can't even really put into words what that feels like, but you don't realize how restricted and confined you are having a 9-to-5, working a job, full-time or part-time, until you give yourself that freedom and that room and space to know all that you can do with 24 hours every single day. And of course, it was something I only had for a short period of time. It was definitely short-lived, but it was worth it. It was one of the best decisions I could have ever made outside of committing my life to Christ. But yeah, I'm not saying quit your job, but I am saying that there's really no words to describe. And I am working now. I do have a remote job that I briefly talked about in my welcome video. So I am working full-time, and I'm working from home now with my first remote job, and that was definitely something that was an answered prayer last year and that I'm very grateful for. As 2023 began to come to an end, I had no idea that I was about to be faced with the deepest valley I had ever experienced at that point in my life. Everything in my life was great. I had never been happier. I had never been so free in my life. I had never felt like I was ever so aligned with what my purpose was in life. And at that point, I had never been closer to God. But before the year would end, things would definitely change in many different ways. And it was God and our relationship building and us becoming closer that helped me get through that storm and that season in my life. And I will never forget that. So I think this is a good point to stop part 1 of my testimonial. I'm going to pick back up where we left off in today's video, and my next video, part 2 of my testimonial. So be sure to come back and check out part 2 of my testimonial, where I'm going to share one of the lowest points of my life and how I was also able to get closer with God because of that. I'll see you in the next one. God bless. If you haven't had a chance to watch my welcome video just yet, definitely check that out here, where you can learn more about me and what to expect in coming videos on my channel.